You validated me.
Okay, let's go on. I want to go back. Chaim Zev pointed out, and I'm very happy. I told my wife this morning I have now a real interested student in Chabad Hasidus, where he realized that I left out about 10 lines I forgot to teach. So thank you, Chaim Zev. So we have to go back to page 112, and it's the second line after the end of those 12 lines that I told you about that the Rebbe suggested we memorize. The second line says V'yamik machshava zu. So I want to learn that quickly till where we learned yesterday. V'yamik b'machshava zu, and one should delve deeply into this thought that God stands upon everyone and looks at you and knows what you're thinking. That's the meditation. Delve deeply into it. Number two, v'yarich bo. V'yarich bo is already spend time, lengthy time. Yarich, aruch, long. V'yarich bo. Now the Alter Rebbe says two things, Moshe, right? V'yamik and v'yarich. V'yamik, Moshe, means delve deeply into it. It can take you 5 minutes, but spend, what's called rikuz hamachshava. Focus your thought. So that's v'yamik. V'yarich is more of a quantitative thing. So let's say that. Yamik is quality, more quality-like. V'yarich is more quantity-like. And therefore he says the next line, that's a description for v'yamik, based on the capacity of your mind and your thought, based on the brains God gave you. Every one of us, Hashem gave us a different type of a brain, a seichel, based on your moichai umachshavtei. That's how much you should be yamik. And just for a moment, some people, they think they're being mamik, and they're not being mamik at all because they cannot go deeper. Their brain cannot go deeper. So you could spend time, as we say in Yiddish, kvetchen sich. Kvetchen means to, how do you say kvetchen? Like force yourself, What?
Complain, yeah.
What is it?
It's mostly complain.
No, not, yeah. Sometimes we use kvetchen as complain. Over here we mean like to force yourself, like to strain yourself. Hey, if the brain that you got is not able, it's begashmi, is not able to go that deep, you can kvetch to today to tomorrow, you're not going to understand it deeper. And this is important. A person needs to know as they grow and develop and learn the brain capacity. It doesn't mean to say you shouldn't try, but, I've been, meditating in Chabad Hasidus for years, many years, and I realized at a certain point that I don't have the brain capacity like another friend of mine who's able to go deeper. So you try, but then you have to know also your limitations. So Kifi, again, if you use this as an excuse not to try, you're guilty. What I'm saying is, you try and you endeavor, but you need to know Kifi Yecholes Hasogas Moichei Machshavtei. And if you're wondering, how do I know? Only a person can know or not know. In other words, and I've seen, I'm sure you've seen students in school that when they were younger, they were weak. And all of a sudden later they become these, not geniuses, but they become so knowledgeable, right? So there was potential for more depth in a certain area and it wasn't explored in their youth. Later, when they explored it, they developed it. But then there's certain things that you just, it's not the type of brain you get. That's what it means. And I also want to point out that the Alter Rebbe employs this type of wording and idea in several places, Avram, in Tanya, in the 53 chapters. So it's not just a one-time thing. It seems to me that the Alter Rebbe understands the human mind. I'm saying to say, he understands the human brain. Because there's several times that we've learned it already. I can't pinpoint now the chapters, but we've learned it, and probably we'll learn it again, where he says this word, how much kefi yecheles hasogas moiche umachshavtei. Okay. Then he says, number 2, ukefi apnai sheloi. Kefi apnai sheloi, chevra, is the quantitative description of the word v'yarich. V'yarich ba. Right? Isser has to be at the office to help people. He can't sit and daven for 7 hours to 4 o'clock every day because he has to help patients. Kefi apnai. Everyone has a certain amount of time. Those that are fully retired can spend more time in davening learning. Those that are not, spend less. So that's a quantitative thing, not a qualitative. Let's continue. When is the time? Now look at this. When is the time you should think about this thought that God stands over you? Lifnei esek haTorah, a mitzvah. Before you learn Torah, you do a mitzvah. Can you imagine? We put tefillin on this morning. So tomorrow morning, before you put tefillin on, that's going to speak about later. Doing a mitzvah, whatever the mitzvah is, you should think about God stands over me. I'm about to do a mitzvah. God knows what's in my heart. That's what he says. Kimoi, he gives an example. Lifnei levishas talos utfillin. Before putting on talos utfillin, the question is, Avram, why does he choose this mushal? I mean, he says you should think about God standing over you, Moshe, every time. Why does he choose the mitzvah of talos tefillin? So possibly, I heard from Rabbi Yoel, possibly it's because it's the beginning of the day. So since he's talking about Kabbalas oil, accepting God's yoke as the beginning of service, Reishis Avodah, so he also applies that to the beginning of one's day, which is before talos tefillin in the morning. That's possibly the reason. Here ends the first meditation. Now comes a second meditation. V'gam yizboinen, and how do we know it's a second one? Because it says v'gam, and you should also reflect and meditate on what? Eich sho'er himself baruch hu, how the infinite God, hasev kolam malkolm, that surrounds all worlds and pervades all worlds. Hu ratzon elyon, this is the will of the supernal. Hu melubish ba'oisis v'chokbes haTorah. Hashem is invested in the words and wisdom of Torah, oy b'tzitzis, utfilin elu, or in the tzitzis that you put on the talos, the tzitzis, and the tefillin. Uvikriyosei, and when you learn the word, when you read the words of Torah, oy b'levishosei, or when you put on the talos and the tefillin, hu mamshich oiri yisborich olav, he draws Hashem upon him, the hainu al chelik elakah mimal, on his godly part, his godly soul, Shabbatayich Kufa, that's in his body, and the result of which is to make the person be absorbed and included and annulled to the light of God. Here ends the second meditation. What's the difference between the first and the second? The first one is Hashem Nitzav Olav. God stands upon you. In a way, it's personal, but it's not personal. Anytime, everywhere. So therefore, he adds the second meditation. It's not just God stands over you when you're, waiting for the light at the street corner. But in your Torah learning and in your mitzvah doing, God is there. You're not just studying a good book, and you're not just doing a good deed. You ask someone, I do a good deed. It's not about a good deed. It's God. It's a mitzvah. That's the second meditation. So the second meditation, Yoini, is much deeper in a way than the first meditation. Now comes the third meditation. Please look inside. V'derech prat and derech prat. So those words, v'derech prat, means specifically is already the key to know that it's a third meditation. Because even the second meditation, it's a general one for all of Torah and mitzvahs. So that's why he says v'derech prat, and more specifically, b'tfilin, when you put on tefillin, this is what you should have in mind. Okay? Tomorrow morning, try it. Libotel v'likolel p'chines chochmosei b'nosei, to annul and to be absorbed with God's chochma bina, shebenafshe likis, within your soul, your godly soul. B'pchinas chochmosei b'nosei shel Kadosh Baruch Hu, your chochma and your bina of your godly soul should be absorbed and annulled to the chochma and bina of the infinite God, hamalubeshes b'derech prat, which is invested specifically b'parshas kadesh v'hoya kiviyacha. So, those of us that put on 2 pairs of tefillin, well, everyone knows that there are 4 portions of the tefillin in the tefillin, right? Now, so 2 of the parshas are Kadesh v'hoya kiviyacha. So he says, the first, Dahainu, sheloi lishtamish b'chochmasi b'nosei shebenafshei biltel Hashem levadei. How does one show that their chochma and bina, that their understanding, that their godly soul has, is dedicated to God by not using it only for things that are not godly, that are just mundane, but rather to invest your own chochma and bina in godly thought. So again, you see here, it's interesting. Now, the Rebbe doesn't say you shouldn't, if you shouldn't use your chochma bina for the work, Moshe's work, art. Even if he wasn't doing Jewish art, right, Chassidic art, whatever, it's art is art. But that doesn't make it that the chochma and bina used for the art becomes godly. Godly it becomes when through your art taka you're expressing a certain nakuda of Torah. So can you imagine? So Moshe learned something in Tanya in one of the shiurim, and then he says, I want to express this idea through the art. That's an example of the chochma of bina in his nefesh elikis that goes from just being, chochma bina. Now it becomes absorbed in godliness. Let's use the word, it becomes divine. Divinity. Divinity is a different level. People ask me, what's Chassidus? So I quote Emmanuel Shochat, Olav Shalom, Rabbi Emmanuel Shochat. I saw once in one of his books a great line. I like it. And I think it's a great one-line answer. Chassidus is the study of divinity. In other words, Torah is the study of divinity, of course. But Torah talks about one ox goring another ox, a get, a marriage, so it's disguised, right? When you learn a piece of Gemara Yoini, when you learn Yeshiva, right? You don't come home saying, Dad, we learned about God. You said we learned about one ox scoring another ox. Or Bava Kama, which was Daf HaYomi now, who pays if you're sleeping and you knock over the jugs with your feet at the end of the bed. Did you ever hear someone say, oh, I learned about the godliness in the jug? No. I learned, right? So Chassidus is the type of limud. All of Chassidus, the Baal Shem Tov, Teres the Baal Shem Tov is the study of God. The conspicuous study of God. When you talk about Bittul, Nefesh Elikis, Atzilus, all these things, it's like, hey, what are you studying? God. And that's why there was initially a reluctance and an ambivalence and an attack and opposition. What do you mean studying God? That's like dangerous territory. We don't go there. You might become a heretic, right? You won't become a heretic from reading the New York Times or other magazines of much worse content, but you might, God forbid, become a heretic from, it reminds me, I'm writing now about YU, so Rabbi Alter B'Tzion Metzger, may have a for Shlema, was a Talmud of the Rav, and he got smicha from Rabbi Soloveitchik in the early 50s. Then he became a professor at Stern College. A most amazing person. I hope to write a little bit about him in the book, because he did so much over his career. He's already, I think, over 90. Anyway, so in the early 50s, he somehow went to a Fabrengen. He liked what he heard, and he was a big Talmud Chacham and a great genius mind, and he accepted that one of the 770 Bacher would come to YU to give a shir in Tanya, but of course not in the base medrash. That they wouldn't allow. So he had it in his dormitory room. And even that, some famous person who's already passed on gave him a hard time and made a big deal about it. And it came to the attention of Rabbi Soloveitchik, who was a student of Tanya. But yet, he has a board and he has others and it's a literature place, on and on. More on the literature orientation. So Rabbi Soloveitchik said in his German, German, English, Yiddish, all the apicursus, we don't have a problem with that. We teach here in YU. And with Tanya, we have a problem. You understand? And that Soloveitchik was a professor of philosophy in addition to being the Rosh Yeshiva. But he knew the score. A lot of the stuff is borderline apicursus. You know what I'm saying? But yet the curriculum calls for it. It's a university. It's not only yeshiva, which that was a big machlekes. As you know, it was there was strikes. The students, Soloveitchik sided with the students against when they wanted to. Originally, Rabbi Yitzchak Elchanan was a yeshiva. Wasn't a college. And then, when, as the years went on, they decided to mix the two. There was a protest by the more right-wing students. And Rabbi Soloveitchik sided with them. But he lost because his superior wanted it to be that way. My point being is that Chassidus is about Elikus. Chassidus is godliness, is divinity. And divinity is something that's obvious. It's like conspicuous godliness and study. And people are like, this is... Anyway, so the Alter Rebbe says here, I want to finish this thought. Not only does your Chochmah and Bina within your soul need to be absorbed and a node to the godliness, but also Das, Chesed Gvura. Das, we learned in chapter 3, Das has offspring, Shein Yira V'Ava, awe and love, Shebeliba within your heart, Das Ho'elyin, HaKoil Chesed Gvura, which includes Chesed Gvura, Hamalubesh B'Parshas Shema V'Hoyim Shemoya. So we have 4 parshas. Okay, let's review. So Kaddish, Parshas Kaddish Likol B'chor, and the parsha called V'Hoya Kiviyacha are the 2 parshas for Chochmah and Bina. Parshas, the 2 other parshas, Shema and V'Hoyim Shemoya, correspond to Das, but Das has 2 prongs, Chesed and Gvura. I.e., through the 4 portions of the Tefillin that are in the Tefillin, there's an inclusion and an annulment to the higher godliness in all aspects of one's Chochmah, Bina, and Das, which Das divides itself into 2 Chesed and Gvura, which basically is Seichel and Midos. So when we put on Tefillin in the morning, then what should be the kavanah? That my mind, and that's what it says in Shulchan Aruch, by the way. In Shulchan Aruch it says what? What's the purpose of the Tefillin? L'shabet halev v'hamoyach, to dedicate your leiv and your moyach, your heart and your mind. So the Alter Rebbe here just breaks it up. How do you mishabed your moach through chokhmah and bina? Kadesh v'hoyim shemay v'hoyim kiviyacha. How do you mishabed the leiv through the parsas shema v'hoyim and shemaya? And this Alter Rebbe, he says this concept in Kabbalah is what it says in Shulchan Aruch, l'shabbat halev ha'moyach. But in Shulchan Aruch you have it in technical halachic terms, and in Kabbalah you have it in its terms. Upatifas tzitzis, and when you wrap yourself with tzitzis in the morning. So this piece of Chevra is the meditation to think about before you put on your tefillin. But we also put on a talis. Those that are married, those are not, the tzitzis. So what should be the kavanah with tzitzis? Tifas tzitzis yichavim. And when we put on tzitzis, we should have in mind, because of Zoyar, it says in Zoyar, lahamshich olav malchusa yizborich, to draw God Asher he into us. Asher he malchus kol elamim. God is the king of all the world. Leyachde aleinu, for God to unite Himself with us. Ayidei mitzvah zu, through this mitzvah. V'hu ke'inyan, and this concept is similar to what it says in the Torah in Parsha Shoftim. Soim tosem alecha melech. Shall you put upon yourself a king? Stop. What's the, and by the way, I correct myself. Yesterday I said that he talks about mezuzah here. It's a mistake. I meant tzitzis. Okay, so correction. So what's the meditation of the kavanah of tzitzis? It seems to me that by tefillin, the kavanah is my chokhmah, my bina, my das should elevate itself and be absorbed in Hashem. By tzitzis, the kavanah is to draw down Hashem to unite with us. So one is what we call hamshacha, and one's called halo. Tefillin is halo, from below to above. Tzitzis, the kavanah is we should cause the drawing down of Hashem, hamshacha, to unite with us by us putting on the tzitzis. So that's a kavanah, a general kavanah. Be that as it may, both of these thoughts is the third meditation. These are not two separate. This is part of the third meditation. The third meditation is not only does God, from His perspective, stand over us, and not only does all of Torah mitzvahs should be absorbed in God and express godliness, but in the particular way of my putting on of tefillin and my putting on of talis, of tzitzis, it's very individual. It's for the prat, for the individual. See what the Alter Rebbe is doing here. So he's now tackled at every aspect of a yid's avodah, the relationship with Hashem. So what's Hashem's relationship with us? That meditation. And God stands over us and He cares and loves about us, number one. Number two, that the Torah that He wants us to learn and the mitzvahs He wants us to do, He wants there to be unity between that. So that's not just from God's perspective, but from our perspective in learning the Torah. God is in the Torah, God is in the mitzvahs, and then more specifically break it down to your daily activity. And so would be not just, by the way, for tefillin, talis and tefillin and talis, but in every mitzvah there is that thing, and that's why many people say l'shem yichud kudsha brichu. Chabad's custom to say l'shem yichud kudsha brichu once a day before Baruch Shamar. The reason is it goes on everything throughout the day, everything else. But many others, as you know, say l'shem yichud before Sfira Soim, or l'shem yichud before this, right? That's their minhag. They want to bring the l'shem yichud specifically. But the concept is that the l'shem yichud is specific. It's not like, when I'm going to do Bikkur Cholim. You're going to do Bikkur Cholim. If we don't say, I don't think people say l'shem yichud, but the concept is there. What is it about Bikkur Cholim that triggers the godliness? What is it about fasting on a fast day that triggers the godliness? So the Alter Rebbe here gave us two examples of something that we do every day, and because the beginning of the day, talis and tefillin. But the same notion is true for throughout every other mitzvah. Chaim Zev, I hope this was helpful and satisfied you, because we taka missed it, and it was good that we spoke.
Very much. Thank you.
You're welcome. Have a great day, everyone. We'll see everyone tomorrow. Zeit gesund. Shalom. Take care. Good day. Bye-bye.
Okay. Thanks.